Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
I'll put that in now. Welcome to the Shaved and Unshaved podcast.
Hello. We've been trying to go for walks, enjoy nature, and get a little exercise.
We'll get a little ching ching.
So we've got absolutely nothing to talk about, but we're gonna do our best.
We came across some very interesting videos. We were watching the Donald Trump 9/11 interview from when he was talking to some news reporter. Absolutely emotionless.
So weird. Such a weird guy.
We're gonna build back, and we're gonna build back better. No, wait, that's Bernie Sanders. Sorry. It's something like that, right? Like,
It was pretty messed up.
and with that odd blue umbrella in the background, which is like supposedly the logo for the Wuhan Lab, where the coronavirus was being tested or
A very strange
developed.
symbolism.
I'm reading too much into it. This is a bunch of shit conspiracy.
I don't know, it's interesting going back in time and looking at people's reactions, emotions, feelings, and how invested they are. Like, that guy saw those buildings fall and thousands of people die, and all he could talk about was being able to build back better, and
How he just witnessed something he's never seen before, and it was so awful for all those people. Not really for him, but awful for all those people.
yeah, like absolutely
Who lost their lives, and all the people who were down there working to try and clean it up. But for him, it was, oh, I've never seen anything like it.
awful, devastating. No emotional attachment whatsoever. Like, and then to think years later that asshole became president of the United States and fucked the free world as we know it. We live in a cartoon. What can you say? Speaking of New York, 9/11 was a pretty traumatic experience for most North Americans, and reflecting back on it's kind of hard because you want to carry on with the mainstream's media's narrative, and you just have to agree with things.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You know,
I don't know,
9/11 was an inside job, and if you know something is not right underneath, and you're being told a certain narrative, but you just feel like something's wrong, well, something probably is, and we all know that it wasn't quite the narrative that I think everybody feels that way to a certain degree, that the narrative we were told about 9/11 was not the full truth.
Wholeheartedly true. So I took you on a vacation last night on YouTube.
Yep.
You saw the slums of Manila. Which was like horrendous. People looked very happy
Yeah, people seemed in fairly good spirits.
and sad, even though it looked like a garbage dump that they lived in.
It was kind of heartbreaking. Yep.
Speaking of New York, we discovered that there's a major trash problem. That there's garbage littered all over the parks and streets. That, like, talk about not being invested in your community. It's like the olden days, like the horse would die in the street and they just leave it there to rot.
Oh, it's become a serious issue. Like, the city has cut funding to these services that clean up and take the trash away, and
now there's a huge rat problem.
And now there's a huge rat problem.
And now there's a huge rat problem.
Rat problem.
and because there have been such a decrease in tourism and so many people have left New York, the usual amount of garbage that is there for the rats to live on is not there. So they're coming out during the daytime hours and being more aggressive, trying to feed themselves with human garbage that
Like they're eating the wires in people's cars, and we saw one still image of like this horde of rats in Central Park, and they were the size of the cat. Like they're just enormous.
And now there's a huge rat problem.
oh my god.
But I've always vowed that like I would never eat in a restaurant in New York if I was to ever visit the city, and if I did end up having to go there, I'd bring my own food with me.
I like peanut butter sandwiches.
Or tuna, yeah, something in a secured can. But like, yeah, I've seen old videos of like rats all over KFC, or like that video of like hundreds of rats in the garbage bin outside Chipotle. Well, like they're all indoors. There's no stopping them from coming up through the sewers or wherever they come from. And I just like, we kind of were touching on like the plague and pestilence and like urban decay, and what are the real reasons that people have left these communities in droves. That like, yeah, again, your public officials will claim that it's the coronavirus, but there's other services that aren't being provided that really make it difficult for people to live in those places. We're not talking about a slum in Manila or a favela in Brazil. You're talking about New York City. So it kept on arising that like people want to equate New York, Paris, Tokyo as
London.
as these great meccas of commerce and business. But I tried to paint a picture for Riel, and we were completely shocked by it, that it's actually decaying at an extreme rate where people are unable to clean up the mess that's been produced from humanity for so long. Yeah, it was actually pretty shocking because, also with like the homeless population in California, and how people from coast to coast are struggling with
Living in tents.
finding stable work, and the fabric of our civilization in North America is slowly crumbling, and we've just settled here. Like, these cities are only a few hundred years old, and they're relics of what they once were, these great centers of business and art and community and like, what are your thoughts?
I think
Because I think Toronto's very similar, but
I
I'll
think-
let you go.
well, yeah, no, I think Canada's probably headed in the same direction.
Vancouver, huge opioid use and homeless
I
population.
think the truth always comes out, and we've been told that America is the land of the free and the brave, and it's, the entrepreneurial dream. But the truth is, it was built on lies and genocide,
slavery.
and it never could be great because that's how it was built up. And I really do think a lot of people want to tear it all down and build it up better.
I've got this funny inkling about time and that newly settling into these communities, and that like we built them up from the ground into the sky with no forethought into how to retain what we value, and like, yeah, it works for the time being, but at some point it's just gonna have to be let go and started anew. Like a 250-year period to me doesn't seem like that long of a time in the due course of history. And which brings us to the other video we were watching, which was an hour long, a night walk in Wuhan. So I'll let you explain your thoughts on it, but we were immediately flabbergasted at the images that we've been portrayed, or like our news media has portrayed Wuhan as, and I don't want to sound too racy, but like a bunch of fishermen and wet markets and rice farmers with like,
Everyone's got paddy wagons and motorbikes.
or rickshaws, yeah.
and,
But let's try to explain the best we can on what we actually saw. Because
So the video was like, I admit, a few months old, but it was just the most affluent city I have seen
anywhere in the world.
anywhere in the world.
Like the streets look like
The
they're paved
streets
with gold.
Were, first of all, packed with people.
Like-
Thousands of people.
Like 200,000 people.
Crammed into a market. And everyone has on a mask, but there's no social distancing, and nobody looks afraid of anything.
There's no garbage anywhere.
Oh, pristine.
The economy looks
Very
booming.
clean. Everybody was well dressed. There were new cars, expensive looking cars. All the storefronts were open and fully stocked. People looked happy, people were socializing, people were spending money and consuming. The streets, the buildings, the architecture, the lights, the everything, like it was just,
Mind-blowingly beautiful.
you know, it was like Las Vegas, but like cleaner.
Yeah, Las Vegas in like the 50s or 60s when it was new and like
It looked spectacular. And you know, this wasn't just, oh, like here's a market. It was an hour-long walkabout
through like an open air shopping center with
through the city. And I understand there are probably parts of the city that aren't as affluent, but
from what we saw, it was pretty shocking. Because if I may,
it's not the Wuhan I was portrayed on the news to me throughout this pandemic.
yeah, like the CBC has given us this view of Wuhan, which is very gray, and people were devastated from the lockdowns. Slaughter
They're not
in the
in a lockdown.
streets. Like it was the
Their economy's not suffering.
it was the exact opposite of what we're being portrayed on the news, and it was really off-putting because I had picked up the kid from school and we're being told that he can't play on the play structure.
There's serious restrictions here.
Yeah, they're fining people like upwards of $1,500 for not wearing a mask in a public place. His school has been reduced to 11 students.
In his cohort, yep. Most of the school has gone to remote learning. a few students are still going.
So I'm completely conflicted with how devastated our communities have been by this so-called pandemic, yet the place that it originated in is thriving, much like some of the major commercial hubs or tourist hubs from the 30s or 40s or 50s, like New York, Chicago. North America resembles Detroit in some way, shape, or form. That it's just decaying. A city made for 3 million is reduced to 300,000, and people are unable to support the infrastructure, and it was really off-putting. Like, we were both absolutely blown away by the contrast between the reality that we're facing here in North America and the reality that's going on other places in the world. That, I don't know, it was really fucked up. Please go check out Wuhan Night Walk on YouTube. You only need
And tell us your thoughts. What do you think of it?
Yeah, you only need to watch a few minutes to really get what we're trying to put across. That there's some mass deception going on, that the world hasn't come to a standstill. Just our world has come to a standstill. And it gave us this, or at least gave me a stark reality that, oh, we're not as affluent as we thought we were.
And it really is eye-opening for all those Americans who are scapegoating Mexicans, South Americans, and Muslims for taking over their country and their job. But the truth is, it's CEOs who have outsourced their economy to China and given all of America's wealth over there. Look how well those people are doing in that video. They're dressed well, they're spending money, they're driving Teslas, they're living in high-rise fancy cities. Like, I'm sorry, but that's the way I see it right now. That's this deception that I'm.
Yeah, it was a way that you would have
It
portrayed.
opened my eyes.
You would have portrayed
There are people
Los
living.
Angeles.
There
or-
are thousands and thousands of people living in tents right now, and there are other people walking around in golden cities with no restrictions.
Yeah, it was very odd, and I hope that maybe you guys will get back to us and tell us your thoughts and feelings on it, because yeah, governments all over North America have just like put into rules and regulations, mandates, restrictions in a way that's unjust. We deserve to have careers and opportunity to travel abroad and to experience other cultures, and it's getting further and further away.
I want to go to Wuhan one day. When we get to travel and everything opens up, I don't want to go to New York City where giant rats run in the streets rampant.
And are eating on the table at KFC or infesting Chipotle. Like, I can't convey enough about
There's no.
like how
The majority of people are not eating at wet markets. Like, if that was true, like, what about Africa? where people like, where are all the crazy diseases coming out of Africa? Well, I guess Ebola was a big scare a few years ago, but you know, it's more common practice in other places in the world. It's like they
to have open air meat markets, but
it's propaganda against China that they want you to believe they're this like underdeveloped country, but the truth is quite the opposite.
yeah. And just how our news media in Canada has portrayed Wuhan.
I'm ashamed of the CBC. That was disappointing to like go back and watch some of the news reports again with new eyes after
Witnessing
seeing Wuhan presented from somebody else's point of view. Just a random stranger deciding to make a video of how they sell Wuhan.
And it was funny because all the videos that we had come across were shot in November,
December 2020.
2020, right as we were going into these lockdowns, being told we can't visit family or friends.
Over Christmas. Don't gather, don't have religious events, don't celebrate in your normal means.
Yeah, and it's mind-boggling. Like, we're not doing it justice by just telling you about it. Like, go and see for yourself that, like, the city is lit up like Las Vegas and
Like Paris.
in its heyday, in when it was the most sought after place to live in the world. And like, I can't wrap my head around it, because we went and watched news reports from our own media that just painted this like gray, bleak, tumultuous lifestyle that's not true. That, you know, people are walking around in suits and shopping and with 3 corgis, like the exact opposite of what you would expect. That like,
Oh, I thought everybody lived in wet markets and ate wild animals, and you know, people were suffering from the lockdowns and the shutdown economies just like us.
and it's not true at all. Like,
It's mind-boggling. Mind-boggling.
it's mind-boggling
It's mind-boggling.
to try to describe. And I can only say, like, go witness it for yourself. Like, yeah, going down YouTube rabbit holes, like, you can see how impoverished the rest of the world is by just watching up-to-date videos on how people are living their lives. Like,
Don't listen to the media. Do your own research. Make your own videos.
and yeah, I know it's turned into a bit of a rant. It was like culture shock on a whole nother level, because we're stuck in this reality of not knowing what tomorrow will bring.
Well, it's also a wake-up call to the deception of our media and our government.
Yeah, and meanwhile, I'm coming home from school with the kid worried, like, oh, is someone gonna call an authority figure to charge my kid for playing on the play structure? Like, are they gonna go around ticketing everybody because they're not wearing a mask or like abiding by these absurd rules? Like, is it gonna turn into just like
And they are absurd rules.
walking single file? Like,
They're
we can't go,
contradictory.
and we can't go to 7-Eleven without coming in contact with a lineup.
Right
The-
now, you can't have, here in Manitoba, you can't have a friend over to your backyard to hang out. But you can go to a public patio and hang out. So you can't hang out with one person in the safety of your own backyard, but you can go to a public place where other people are not wearing masks and have drinks there. It just seems absurd that they're ticketing people for that, for not wanting to go out in public and to be in their own yards.
And to get some simple goods from
They
Walmart,
don't make these rules.
there's an hour and a half lineup.
The lineups, ugh.
Like, there's no freedom.
They've shut things down to 10% capacity, so there's lineups everywhere you go.
Yeah, you're free to go walk in the bush and get stuck in some mud, but that's about it. Like,
Life is feeling unfair at the moment, isn't it?
well, I wish I could paint a better picture for people on what we're trying to describe. That, like, there's been some mass deception that's been perpetuated by our governments, and it's looking more and more like North Americans are a slave class with absolutely no freedoms. They've come in.
No powers, no rights, crumbling economies, crumbling healthcare systems, housing problems, addiction problems.
For the local government to keep McDonald's, Walmart, weed stores, alcohol sales, gambling, like casinos open,
Yet they've
is
closed-
insane.
They've closed down the schools, they've closed community sports, they've closed support groups, they've closed, social programs, they've, slashed all these public programs. Doesn't look good. We've paid the police a lot more money to go out and enforce tickets for people who aren't complying.
Yeah, and if I'm understood, like, we can speak about our own lives here in Manitoba, but when you look at a place like New York, where it's what, $2,000 to $3,000 a month for rent, and they're not picking up the garbage. They had school kids going out and cleaning up people's masks and PPE, or it just was so freaking odd to me.
And we're back to the Shaved and Unshaved podcast.
So yeah, I was kind of freaking out that it's really reminiscent of, like, kind of the old stories from communist Russia, or like that gray and brown bleak existence of humanity where, yeah, we've been told life is just fantastic. Watch your bread and circuses and shut the fuck up, pretty much. Like,
Like, you're supposed to be happy at a bunch of millionaires skating in circles to sell merchandise to the masses. And
there's just something really odd. Maybe that, like, our life is in turmoil and things are really difficult. That I almost equate it to a silent war going on in the world. That more people will die from starvation over the next 6 months than all the people who have died from coronavirus. I'm falling short of being like, it's a lie, it's all a fucking lie, don't believe what they're saying, these are like fascist totalitarian regimes spewing propaganda and bullshit. But you're a product of your environment, you're a product of your community, you're a product of your parents and how they were raised. And I mean, the older generation just ate up their bullshit like it was fucking a bowl of corn pops in the morning. Like, just neglected their grandchildren, neglected their elderly parents who were passing away. And now our governments are shoving people into care facilities in close quarters. And it just fucking seems like a mass genocide. Like, I don't know if I'm losing my mind or what I'm trying to portray has some truth to it. I have a tendency to over embellish, but like, I've had the opportunity to travel throughout Europe and some of East Asia, and like, I just didn't think life was so undervalued for so long, which brings us to like the news of the last 2 weeks with like Israel and Palestine, that I don't really have an opinion on it. War is wrong. Undervaluing people's lives is wrong and unjust, unfair, and yeah, some asshole will tell you, oh, just pull up your socks, work hard, and you too can be that billionaire. I can't necessarily agree with that. The later generation has just become a bunch of bootlickers, like leaving it into the hands of a bunch of Nazi doctors and crooked politicians to exploit the masses, and like, there's no direction. They've just robbed the coffers, and I don't want to get on one side or the other, play into these shitty paradigms of left and right. It's wrong. They've put in all these restrictions seemingly to stop people from protesting because unemployment is through the roof. And like, I'm not an economist. I have somewhat of a university education, but I've never finished with the degree. I've really suffered by being counterculture. That like, we grew up
listening to punk and like expressing our freedoms, having drinks and partying, and like it just feels like a trap at the end of the day, that there's nothing more they want than to have you rely on their unjust system. And
like, it's that old mantra of like, only the good die young. Yeah, if you're a crooked, evil son of a bitch who's willing to rob or devastate a community through like dealing drugs or exploiting the disenfranchised and dumb, that they'll stop at nothing. Like, I think it was Biden was like, oh, it's the weak die and the strong survive. And it's like, so you're okay with just massacring and murdering hundreds, if not thousands upon thousands of people, women, children, elderly, claiming that, oh, they were just weak, it's their own fault. It seems really fucked up to me.
Yep.
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 Yeah.
So, to conclude, Riel had to go to work. We cut it short. I was hoping to get some more feedback from her. I interrupted her too much and didn't really give her an opportunity to speak. I have a tendency to do that, being a bit egocentric. Appreciate all of you for spending this time with us. I hope you can get out into the world and experience life to the fullest. Stay awesome. Be positive and help others when they're in need. Try to be your best self. I hope to be doing more of these. I wish I could find the time, but life has been extremely chaotic lately, and I just want to say thank you once again. Take care of yourselves, enjoy the weekend ahead, and
Let's not go out without a fight. Just remember there are caring, compassionate, kind people in this world, and I hate to dwell on negatives, but that's just where we're at this point, and hopefully there'll be some wonderful footage of the summer with some in-depth, detailed exploration of the world around us. I was hoping to talk about Elon
Musk on SNL, but this one took a turn in a different direction.
If anybody's having trouble, feel free to reach out to us and shoot some topics our way. We're always willing to share a point of view, and if you think we're in the wrong, feel free to leave a comment down below. Stay happy and take care of one another. We're not here for a long time, but we're here for a good time. So, peace. Mushi mushi. Arrivederci. I don't know anymore. I've lost it. I don't know anymore. I've lost it. I don't know anymore. I've lost it.
I don't know anymore. I've lost
I
it.
don't know anymore. I've lost it.